Okay. All right. Hey everyone, it's Ian McCausland. We're doing a little video interview with some of the photographers that I admire, and of course the first person I thought of and the first person to volunteer is my buddy Jon Adaskin here. Say hi, John.
Hi.
So we're going to talk a little bit about Jon's journey to be the photographer he is, and then talk a little bit about his work. It's really impressive. I think you're going to be really excited to hear and see all about this. So Jon, tell us the journey that you took to become a photographer.
I started out going with my dad out shooting in nature scenes. My dad was a painter, member of the RCA, a well-known established Canadian artist. And he would take pictures of nature scenes and then use the slides that he would take the pictures from and put them up on the canvas and then paint from the memory of what he saw within that image and then use the image to trace on and do his painting from there. So from those early experiences, I was loading the film, I was carrying cameras, I was carrying gear, and it wasn't really work, it was just going out with my dad and bonding and taking pictures. And,
How old were you then?
Geez, I started probably about, I might have been in grade 2.
Oh wow, that young.
Yeah. And I actually started loading cameras and putting film in cameras when, shortly after that, probably grade 3, grade 4 maybe. So, but grade 2, definitely I had my hands on stuff. I was counting things. It was he had his things set out when we went, so we'd have to count that we had how many rolls of film that we had, which cameras. He always pretty much shot with one camera, one lens, and sometimes would use a telephoto. But he almost always shot with a Mamiya SLR, sort of entry level, all manual, and about a 50mm lens. And I think the film that he was using at the time was the slide film, a Kodak slide film. I can't remember which one. But yeah, so I would load that in.
So at what point did you decide to use photography for your own vision?
I think it just developed over time. I'm not sure that I ever had an idea in place of how that would evolve. It just kind of evolved. It started with my dad, and then I started shooting myself because I was interested in the images that were being created. And honestly, what he was shooting really bored me, and I thought to myself I wanted to shoot different things. If I were him, I'd be doing it this way. And so I just started doing it myself and taking the shots that I liked. And interestingly enough, I started out shooting much of the same things he did because that's all I knew. I didn't really start to figure out until many years later how to use the camera, how to capture things, how to use my feelings and emotions to contribute to that.
Mm-hmm. So then photography's always been kind of a part of your
whole life.
Your whole life?
My whole life, yeah.
Wow.
And then actual technical training didn't start for me until high school. So I was William B. Travis High School in Austin, Texas, and
Mm-hmm.
for 3 years I did photography at the high school level there, and that probably shaped me into later years in creating my educational programs that I do now. So that was probably that was very instrumental to me on many levels.
And then what happened next? What was the next part of it?
So I guess I was about 16 when we returned to Canada, and I had a Pentax K1000, which I actually still shoot with today, and I thought maybe I'd try doing a wedding, and so I had a Pentax K1000, and I got somebody to allow me to do their wedding, and the rest is history. That's how it started. So I did weddings for a long, long time, and didn't like it at all, and probably wasn't particularly good at it. So, but that's how I honed my skills on understanding light and framing and whatnot.
Sorry, I'm trying not to be distracted by this switching thing that I'm trying to figure out.
He's doing a great job, by the way. You guys should watch this guy work here.
There we go. I'm just trying to make sure we've got the camera focused on you and not me.
And this is the first time, so you guys are seeing this first time as it's rolling out. So
this is brand new.
This is brand new. We're built as Ian and I have built several things together in the photography world. This is yet another one that I'm proud to be part of number one.
So when I met you, you were still doing weddings and stuff like that, but you didn't seem to be enjoying it as much as you would have thought to be.
No.
And then you made a conscious decision. I think it was what 3 years ago.
I made a conscious decision when my daughter Olivia was born in 2009 to stop shooting weddings altogether because it made no sense to me to be working a bulk of my work life during the summer and weekends when, as the kids would be getting older and getting through school, they're going to be off, and that's going to be the time for family connection. And as you know, a lot of you don't know, but as you know, the family is my focus. Photography is not the focus of my life.
Right.
So my family is the focus of my life.
Yeah.
And I needed to make sure that I kept that in the frame.
Yeah.
That needed to be what I was working on.
We're using a lot of photo
metaphors. Yeah, sorry.
But I mean, that's the language we use, right? Yeah. So keeping that in the frame, keeping it part of your focus. So then you made a conscious effort to make sure that
it lends itself to a successful.
Oh my gosh. But you know, it's funny because you know you hear so many stories about people who are creatives who end up sacrificing part of their family life because the pull of creativity is so strong.
Yeah.
And in your instance, it's the other way.
Yeah.
Whereas that your creativity, you made a conscious effort to make your creativity take a back seat to what's really important to you. And I think that's partly why I wanted to talk to you as part of this series, because that's admirable in that sense that, you know, we kind of celebrate artists who end up making, you know, bad decisions or sacrifices for the better, you know, to suffer for their art, whereas you refuse to let your family suffer for the art. Right.
Everything else can suffer, not my family.
Right. And I think as the kids get older, you'll be able to carve out more time for the art, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're young right now, so you want to be there for them, right?
Yeah. Livia is just turning 8 soon, and Zach just turned 3 on the weekend.
Yeah. So you're right in the zone.
Yeah, I need to get past probably at least until Zach is in school, when he starts grade 1 or when he starts school full time.
Yeah.
I can really start to think about doing things differently again. But as it is right now, you know, I really have to fit in my work life around my family, not the other way around.
Which kind of brings us to the present day, and we both actually right in this space here kind of learned about.
It was in this very space.
In this space, we learned how to do a process called tintype or wet plate.
Yeah, plate clothing.
With our buddy Ken Miner, who's probably going to watch this video. So shout out to Ken.
Ken.
Another interesting guy. I'd love to get him on video and talking about his journey as well.
Ooh, I don't know how much luck you'd have getting in front of the camera.
Yeah, well,
you could try. Yeah, he would be good.
But that wasn't this past summer. It was the summer before we did that.
Yeah.
Summer of 15.
Yeah, 2015.
And there was a lot of excitement. We all, you know, all the participants were just like super stoked, and we're really keen to continue doing it. But
do you remember how renewed we felt?
Yeah.
How inspired and renewed, and it was like opening a new present that you couldn't wait to get your hands on to play with. It was an absolute eye-opening, heart-opening, thought-opening process, for me anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think we all experienced that.
I do. I think it helped that we had an amazing group of people that were taking the course.
Yeah.
And then the process itself, for me personally, because I hadn't been in the darkroom since 2002, I think it is, to kind of reconnect with that, with a tactile process, like you know, any kind of darkroom process, was, again, like you say, very invigorating, because it was kind of, you know, reminding me of the magic of why I got into this in the first place.
Yeah. And of course, I never left the darkroom. I've been in the darkroom.
You've been shooting film
all the way
through.
Yeah.
So if anyone is interested in learning this process, who knows, maybe there'll be some opportunities to learn it from Jon or other people, but I highly encourage any photographer to try this process out. It's actually a lot easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah. Well, the process is easy. Getting good results is a completely different story.
The technical parts of it I thought
quite easy.
were a lot easier than I thought, because I've done cyanotype and gum bichromate, and I've helped other guys do palladium and stuff like that. This is actually incredibly accessible to people who haven't even had a darkroom experience.
Yeah. And the learning process to it. So you can buy, as you know, you can buy all of the stuff that you need in packaging and have it delivered right to your door. And more so this year, I've actually transitioned into mixing my own chemicals. So buying raw chemicals and actually mixing my own chemicals.
Because of the volume that you're doing.
Well, the volume that I'm doing, but also the ability to create much, much smaller amounts if I need to, or much larger amounts if I need to, and really have that control. The package, when it comes, you have to mix bottle A with bottle B, and that's your result. So you could try and do half and half of each, or a quarter and a quarter of each, but if you don't get those levels right when you're mixing it, that becomes an issue with the result, and there you go. So
for the viewers who are watching this, who aren't photographers, or photographers who aren't familiar with the process, describe it to everybody what you do, or what makes a tin type.
So I mean, tin type is a photograph that appears on a metal plate or a glass plate, or actually on any substrate that you choose. I've seen people do it on rocks and on many different types of surfaces, but most typically on glass, which is an ambrotype, and on metal, which is a tin type. And it's you pour collodion onto the plate. It's called flowing the collodion. You pour the collodion on the plate, and you move it around so it reaches the entire plate. You drain it off, and then you put it into silver nitrate. And essentially, the collodion on the plate acts like glue that the silver nitrate then sticks to the collodion on the plate. And then that now becomes a light-sensitive film emulsion, basically. And it's still very similar to the way that films are made today. It's the same kind of process, not the same chemicals, but the same idea. Still using silver nitrate to be the light-sensitive part of that. And then you have to do it while the entire process is wet. So you have 8 to 12 minutes for the entire process from start to finish. Once you take it out of the silver nitrate, it goes into a holder, it goes into the camera. You take the picture. Meanwhile, you have to be prepared for that because it takes you some time to set up your subject. It takes, there's a process involved with that. So there's some organization that's involved with that. So you take the picture, you take it back, you develop it. You just flow some chemical on it to develop it. And then you rinse it. You just use water as a stop bath and stop it. And you let it dry. And you put on a coating on the top of Sandarek varnish, and that protects it for, we've seen wet plate collodion images from over 100 years ago that are still as if they were taken as recently as these ones on the table here. Well, so that's essentially the process. And then because they're a little bit darker in nature, lighting is essential when you show them. And so those are that's the gist of how it's done in a nutshell. Quick.
So it's a delicate balancing act of time and all the chemistry, but it sounds really complicated, but it's actually...
It's not. It's not. It's just, it's like anything else. You have to think through the process, find the process that works best for you by tweaking what you need to do to get it done, and then that's the planning stage, and then the execution stage. So once those two meld together, you start to get results that are, they take your breath away when you see them. To this day, still.
Yeah. And that leads us to this past fall, I guess, or before that. You did a show in conjunction with the Flash Photo Festival.
I did, yeah. Dignity, the Strength of Indigenous Women.
Okay, tell us a bit about that.
So, Dignity, the Strength of Indigenous Women was the female family members of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls here in Manitoba. So all of the portraits that I did were all of the female family members of those missing girls, women. And it was a it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. It was I had lots of feedback from people going into it, you included, that was kind of looking at it with bated tongue a little bit, like, oh, I hope you can pull this off. Like, oh, that's a huge undertaking. That's, oh boy. And the pressure for me was incredible, absolutely incredible. And then I had no idea the amount of emotional stuff that would go on during the actual shoots themselves. Right. It happened over about 6 weeks, September, end of August into September. Happened over about, to get them all done was about 6 weeks.
Right.
Incredibly emotional.
And where were you feeling the pressure? On the technical side of things or the logistics side
of
things?
All of it. Flying by the seat of my pants. I knew exactly what I wanted to create in the imagery, and I knew exactly what I was going after in what I wanted to say, but everything else was up in the air. Venue, how to show it, lighting, reception, the logistics of that involved, media. I had to actually have a team built to help me work my way through it. The media was coming from all over the place. And then it started to spill over outside of Canada. Right. From the US, from England, from the United Emirates, from Australia. And so all this media is coming, and I needed the help because I'm out of my element.
Yeah. So that must have felt pretty gratifying to have all this media attention on this show. Like, that was your intention originally to do this series wasn't to garner international acclaim or anything like that.
Nope.
Well, talk about what your intention was behind this work.
Well, and I've talked about this publicly a lot. There's lots out there on the internet of what my thoughts about that. But basically, in a nutshell, I felt like as a person, and as a man, that I felt sort of this real sense of responsibility for what has happened to the Indigenous community, but Indigenous females specifically. And you and I have had lots of discussions over the years about how we feel about those issues. For me, I needed to do something more than talk. I needed to do something more than just say, this is how I feel, or this is how I feel about why this has happened. But I needed to put it in the faces of people that you can't look away from these images. You can't. You look at it, you see the images when you know the backstory behind what you're looking at, and you are looking into the eyes of the people that are looking into the lens of the camera, and the pain that's with that, and the angst, and the searching, and I really needed to put that out there. I needed to say, I support you. I want to give you this venue. I don't know what you're going through, because A, I'm not Indigenous, and B, I'm male. So, I don't know what it's like to be dealing with what you're dealing with, but I would like to give you the opportunity to be able to tell the world how you feel. And that's what I tried to create with the images, that they could, the eyes just, Mm-hmm. So that's what I tried to create with it. And I think I succeeded, although I guess there would be varying opinions. Some people don't get this at all. They wonder why I waste my time. He's not this, or he's not that, or he's just doing this. So there is some conflicts that go on, but this was really my way to say to these people, I support you.
Right. So let's show, for as best we can, let's show a couple examples of the work.
Okay.
And I'm going to zoom in on them here as best I
can.
can.
So tell me how to position this.
That looks good. Okay, I think we're seeing it. So talk a little bit about.
I can actually take that closer to the camera too.
Yeah, you could do that. All right, and then just.
Is that okay?
Yeah, just tilt it down just a smidge, and then we can get rid of some of the glare. Yeah. Now, just for those not familiar with the process, this is a one-of-a-kind piece of art. This is made right on top of a piece of tin.
This is on metal.
Right. Sorry, my camera's freaking out here.
Sorry.
And it's 8x10, so you're working with an 8x10 camera. How old is your camera?
Camera is about 126 years old.
So a 126-year-old camera doing a process that is
170-year-old
process.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about what you decided to do in terms of how you did these portraits.
Yeah, so you can see in the image that the woman is sitting. This particular woman is Bernadette Smith, and she's sitting in a chair up against a plain wooden wall that's behind her, and there's a small amount of gravel under her feet that she's sitting on. So all of the images are exactly set up the same way. It was less about, I wanted to have less distraction in the images, and I wanted to have more attention on the subjects. So I needed to make the backgrounds as plain and unassuming as possible. So that's why I chose to do it this way.
Okay. Let's show them a couple other pieces here. While I try and convince my camera to stay zoomed in on it.
Is that okay? Is that working?
Yeah, that works great.
Yeah, okay. You okay for Claire?
Yeah.
Okay. So this, again, here's another example. This is Vanessa, and she, again, plain background, sitting on gravel, and yeah. So keep in mind as you're looking at these, every one of these women that I'm showing you has had somebody very, very close to them murdered or is currently missing.
And let's show them this piece because this one's really impressive. Now you've got 3.
Yeah, these are 2 sisters and a mother. This piece is called Seneca's Family, and it's the McLean and Chartrand family. And to me, it's so incredibly powerful because there's 3 people affected by the one incident of having a family member gone murdered or is missing, and the power in the imagery is incredible. The look is somber, and but the back story to it is filled with intelligence and respect, and I just find this to be an incredibly powerful image.
Right on.
This is another Vanessa, and same thing again, just another example of the same. Just incredible, beautiful women that are suffering with immeasurable pain. They want answers. They've got questions, they want answers, and so far they're not really getting them. So, keep going, or that's enough?
Yeah, it's up to you. Whatever you like.
More?
One more,
I'll
sure.
show one more. You okay for glare?
Yep, looks great.
It does? Oh, good. Yeah, good. So, and that's another example. And there were totally in the show there were 20 images that were shot for the exhibition. So 20 portraits were done. 19 are currently part of the exhibition. 18 are currently being shown actively. So that's where we're at with that.
And on a technical level,
Yeah.
how did it go in terms of success? Like, was this a hit and miss process, or were you just banging them out every time?
As it is right now, for 20 images for 20 portraits that I did, I needed to reshoot 2 of them at the time of shooting. I needed to reshoot another 2 at a later date after I had finished shooting the original. So 4 altogether out of the 20. Everything else, first time, first crack, bang.
And you showed them for the month of October. Whereabouts was the venue again?
The Haberdashery on Albert in the Exchange District here in Winnipeg. And it was there for the entire month of October for the Flash Photography Festival, and then it was held over for another 3 weeks. After that, into November, the store owner was reporting that there was still significant numbers coming through on a daily basis. So we decided to hold it over, and when the numbers dropped to about 10 or 12 people a day coming through, that's when we took it down.
And then what's your plan for the work now? Do you plan to show it on the road or show it somewhere else?
It's kind of up in the air. We've had interest from a gallery in London, England, and we've had interest from a gallery in Dubai that want to have the exhibition travel there to show there. None of that has been sorted out yet, so I'm not really sure what's happening with that.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm also actively working on 2 separate things coming up for this next shooting season, which are the second part to this series, which will be Dignity, the Strength of Indigenous Families. This one was Dignity, Strength of Indigenous Women. That one's Dignity, Strength of Indigenous Families. And it'll be going into the northern communities all over Manitoba and shooting a series of portraits in their own home communities, and to include male members of families as well. So there's a second part to that series that we're going on. Logistically, there's some problems. We have Perimeter Airlines is on board. They're totally on board. Bearskin Airlines is a little not so much. There's some logistics that we have to work out yet in order to make that happen. So that's part A of that side. The second part to it is that we mentioned earlier Ken Miner, who was the guy who taught us how to do this, that he and I are actively working on doing a cross-Canada series of teaching workshops through the summer.
Okay.
So residential, 2-3 day years. Where we'll provide a venue to have it done. We'll provide meals. We'll provide lodging and food, and a snack every night, and hopefully in places where there's a lounge, you can have a little drink in the evening and talk and go for walks around nice nature areas.
So a fully immersive experience in terms of just like eat, sleep, and drinking.
That's
this process for 2 days.
Yeah, we're trying to, in a much bigger sense, recreate exactly what happened here in this very space with us, where over a few days it was just frickin' immersion.
Yeah. So why
immersion?
Yeah, that's cool.
Didn't say it was smart.
So why do you think tintype has surged in popularity over the last few years?
I think that there's varying reasons for it. If you're asking my own personal...
Yeah, why did you embrace this process?
My own personal thought behind it. When digital photography came onto the scene, it was an incredibly expensive, unattainable thing. I had to take out loans. I had to borrow, beg, and steal to get my first digital system. The learning curve was immense. It wasn't just stepping into it and starting. It was like a whole new, my entire photography world was topsy-turvy. The side shoot off of that is it also opened the doors for anybody to shoot beautiful imagery. And it opened the door for many people to come into the business that weren't in the business originally. It created, although it was a technology and it advanced and it was great, it created immense issues for people that were already established in the business that we still feel today. In order to set yourself aside to make somebody want to come to you, you have to discern yourself from the crowd. You have to be able to live in a world where if you're planning on opening a hamburger shop beside McDonald's, good luck with that. It's possible, but you've got to make yourself different than that in order to do that.
Right.
So for me, Wet Plate revealed to me getting back to original, in one fell swoop, oh my God, no more Photoshop. Oh my God, no more high-end computer systems and transferring. Oh my God, no more, not looking the part because I don't have a camera that looks the part. Gone.
Right.
Gone. And now I walk in and I'm the star of the show with 100-year-old technology. That was what really drew me to it, was the ability to get back to the we're talking really the basics of photography. Anybody can pick up a camera and in no time flat and start making beautiful images with a digital camera. You can't do that with this, not unless you're committed and you have thousands of dollars to do it with. It's commitment. It's getting back to basics. And you have to know what you're doing. You have to understand light and exposures, and those are the three basic formulations that you need. It's a mathematical equation, and you need, as part of that mathematical equation, to figure out your exposure, you need an f-stop, how wide and open your lens is going to be. You need an ISO, what's the sensitivity of your film or the subject that you're using, and you need your shutter speed, how fast the shutter opens and closes. Once you have those three factors as part of that mathematical equation, you figure out anything you need to take an image. So it's not so different in that sense. It's quite similar that way. But the trick being is that the collodion, trying to figure out the ISO of collodion, most cameras, if you want a nice clear image, you shoot it at a ISO 100 or maybe 50 if your camera goes that low, if it's capable. Collodion has an ISO of 3 or slower. So you have to know math, you have to know shutter speeds, and you have to know how to figure it out when you're using a light meter to figure out what your light ratios are to get an image that's good. So probably doing the legwork ahead of time on these images and doing the calculations before I took the images, knowing what f-stop I wanted to shoot them at, greatly helped me in getting the exposures first crack and getting it right out of camera. We talk about getting it right out of camera. That's so many people just don't do that.
Right. Yeah.
But getting it right out of camera is just, I hate Photoshop and I hate computers. And if I have to, and I have to go in there and do it, and in my digital work, obviously I have to all the time. I have to do it every day. But it doesn't give me the pleasure this does. That pays the bills. This gives me the pleasure of being a photographer.
So you're going to continue doing it with this format?
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems to really speak to your...
It does. It just
vision.
It grabbed my soul. It wouldn't let go. And the stuff's not going anywhere. The chemicals aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
There's not really much that can go wrong with my camera. I don't have to worry about upgrading. In fact, upgrading would be detrimental to the process.
Right. Yeah.
And I can't go older because I've got... We've been talking about maybe we're going to do another thing somewhere down the road where I'll walk you through the process, the actual hands-on physical process. You can see all the equipment, but there's not much. If I upgraded, that would take me away from the camera. It's really the lens that's the important part of this process, as with any camera.
Yeah.
The lens and the person taking the picture are really the two things, in my opinion.
Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is the other project that you and I work on a lot is this health portrait project that we do every year.
Yep.
And
which, by the way, we should probably think about linking all kinds of things.
We'll definitely have to put lots of links.
In case you don't know, most people in Winnipeg here know, but if you're looking this abroad, you might not know what that's about.
Yeah. But it also speaks to the idea of the sort of responsibility as an artist to use your tools for the social good.
Yeah.
And I see you making that kind of decision here as well.
Yeah. There's a connective tissue there.
Right. Your work, your decisions as a photographer are speak to your level of commitment to the community.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about that, about how you feel sort of the responsibility to use the tools for...
It's incredibly important to do that. I mean, not only is it important to contribute back to your community in terms of the work that you do, it also creates provenance for a history of what your community looks like when you were doing it. And it's important to ensure that that is properly documented and done. So the thing that sticks out to me is when I was a wedding photographer, I was knocking out the same things over and over and over again. I know in your commercial work that a lot of that's the same, that you have a certain shot that you like and a certain way you like to set it up, and it's super repetitive. It's over and over and over again. And this allows you to show a community in a certain way and speak to a certain issue if that's where your heart is drawn to. And it allows you to do it on your own terms. I know as photographers we've talked lots about how everybody is quick to jump to that work sucks, or that person sucks, or that their photography sucks, or their lighting's terrible, or, there isn't any need for that. There's no, you don't need to say something in the negative about somebody who's doing their work, especially if they're doing stuff that's in community-based work, when you could support it, when you could speak to it, or you could simply just not say anything at all and keep your mouth shut. The negativity behind it is a detriment to us all. So, in the sense of helping out the community as well, I think that for me doing it in a positive way, which is what I'm trying to do with the creation of the pieces here, speaks to it in a positive way. Mm-hmm. May not agree to it, may not like it, may not, all the other things that go along with it, but I am in control of what I can do in a positive way to move forward. Right. I don't necessarily have to contribute to the negative part of it. And so, you've known me many years to know that I'm not super involved in the photography community. I don't particularly take part in a lot of photography related things, and I don't very often speak out openly in negativity against somebody else. That may not be, that's not the way I feel. I may feel very negative towards somebody else. Yeah. But to speak up publicly against that, I don't think does me any good. And, right. And I'm not interested in making anybody feel that. Yeah. I mean, I don't have to like the work that you're doing, but that doesn't necessarily mean I don't like that person. Right. And then how do people think about me when I do that? Yeah. Because I know people do it to me. I'm sure people have done it to you. I'm sure it's happened to many people. Right. It's important to support. It's important to support, to wrap your arms around it and help it. And there's just no room for negativity. Yeah. And there's no room to offer your professional critique unless it's warranted or solicited. If it's warranted or solicited, by all means, go. Right. But, unless it's, and there's a lot of that too. People, they know lighting, so they pick apart other people's stuff. I can't even read some of it. Yeah. I can't even read some of it. I feel like we're getting. I might feel that same way. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we're getting that way. Like people are understanding that. I mean, you could probably speak to this, but there is a photographic community per se. Yeah. Whereas, 25 years ago, it was like I always equated to like gunslingers at the OK Corral with everyone just kind of standing around looking at each other. Yeah. 25 years ago, none of us knew each other. Or very few of us knew. We would only know each other by name. Right, and you'd know somebody that you were maybe close to. Yeah. You'd know, but of course with the coming along with, internet and Facebook and Twitter and Messenger and text messaging and all kinds of other sources, being able to access somebody and have them involved with you in some sense, some communication that goes back and forth, that just didn't exist then. No. So for me, I had nothing to do with the photography community in my early years. I mean, nothing. No professional organizations. I had one other friend who was a photographer. He didn't know anybody either. So it's interesting when this started to blossom a little bit. We kind of all found each other. Yeah. And working in such a small space that was. And I'd almost argue that's part of the reason why Tintype's grown too, because of the sharing of the resources online and stuff, right? Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of it too. Actually, there's a vast number of amazing people who are sharing the knowledge in terms of how to do it. Yeah. Yeah. Whereas 25 years ago, this was unheard mystical. Of. Yeah. Yeah. Unheard. There was hardly anybody doing it. There was John Coffer. Yeah, that's it. And there was. And Mark Ostrom. Yeah. I hope you're watching because I sent you the text message. Mark
And-
Osterman, for anybody who doesn't know, is the curator and head of the original processes at Kodak Eastman in Rochester, New York. So he and I are connected, and he's helped me a lot with this.
So anything else you want to share with everybody?
Get out and shoot.
Yeah.
Get out and shoot. Say hi to the person standing beside you. Take the picture.
It's just that simple.
It is. It really isn't much
Yeah.
more than that.
Now you're going to have
Once you open yourself to the person that's beside you that you don't know, you become much more comfortable. They become much more comfortable, and you know. So.
and then you're still putting together the idea of these workshops and stuff like that. We'll see that coming up in the next little while.
Well, we're hoping. Yeah, we're still in the planning stages. We have a possible venue location, and we're working out the financial logistics for Manitoba. And we have a lot of interest in Saskatoon. We have a lot of interest in BC. So past that, we're still kind of working it out. But on my website at jonadaskin.com, there's a button that you can press that says, if you want to learn how to do this collodion process, press this button. Send me an email. Let me know you're on board, and we'll make it happen.
So there you go, folks. If you want to learn more about this process and learn it from a great guy who has a huge heart and is willing to give back to the community and do amazing work, look him up online, jonadaskin.com.
jonadaskin.com.
Okay.
JONADASKIN, jonadaskin.com. And phone number is there and emails there if you even have any questions that you want to know about photography in general, or wet plate photography specifically, or if you want to connect and have a cup of coffee, call me.
There you go. Okay, well, thanks again for doing this. My first photographer interview. Hopefully, this will inspire other photographers to sit down and talk about their craft.
I hope so.
I know I've got a couple lined up. There's a couple that are kind of thinking about it. But I think moving forward, this could be a really fun series of interviews where we just learn about each other and learn about our motivations and our journey to become the artists that we are. So thanks again for all this.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching all 42 minutes of it. If you've watched
42 minutes.
I know,
I'm
it goes
sorry.
fast.
I'm sorry. I talk. I can't stop. I'm sorry.
That was awesome. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody.
As Katy Perry says.